Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. So welcome back on Isabelle's talk show. And I'm so happy to welcome back Sandra Itenson Sweetman. Sandra, you've been on the talk show before, and that was absolutely fantastic. So thank you ever so much for being back again.
Well, and, I'm thrilled to be here, so thanks. And here I am interrupting you already. The powers of Zoom of timing, yeah.
So before we start with the gifts of imperfection, I would like to introduce my guest. So Sandra Itenson Sweetman usually is somewhere between Asia, North America, and New Zealand. But due to the pandemic travel restrictions, she has spent the past few years at her family farm in Ontario, Canada, and is happy to be traveling again really soon. And yes, she's going to New Zealand soon. Hobbies include all things creative, music, art, and cooking, to name a few. So the founder of protocols Heart, Meta, and Sweet, Sandra's passion is to assist others to discover and embrace the world of subtle energy to bring about the shift they desire. She also enjoys the online community arena she created where like-minded souls can connect, feel at home, and receive inspiration. So welcome back, Sandra, and tell us about the gifts of imperfection.
Okay, now it's my turn to speak. Yes, thank you. It's, well, first of all, as you were, talking about what I do, it occurred to me, when I say I really enjoy telling people about subtle energy, before I even talk about the gifts of imperfection, because subtle energy actually has something to do, well, not something, for me, everything is about energy. I thought perhaps it would be helpful to explain to people what on earth subtle energy is. It's like, what does she mean by subtle energy? So when you say energy, everybody understands that. When you say subtle, the reason it's called subtle is these are energies that are unseen, unheard by, the usual methods. However, when you have the clairs, like for people who can see the unseen, and it's not like, the movie I See Dead People, but it's simply seeing energy, whether they can see an energy field with their eyes. We call those people clairvoyant, clair being, having the clarity to see. So really, another word for subtle energies would be unseen or unfelt. Somebody says, oh, I heard a message from my guides. It doesn't mean they're schizophrenic and are hearing voices. What it is they are sensing through, people call it a sixth sense. Perhaps we should call that the first sense. It's there before all our other senses, so that, you could be someone who feels things. And I find a lot of people who come to see me with what they feel are ailments or problems, really, they are empaths, so they're sensitives. It's interesting, in the olden days in England, they used to call psychic people sensitives. And I thought that's really a good word, because you are more sensitive to other energies. So that's really what we mean by, subtle energies. So how does that, where's the link between that and the gifts of imperfection? Every time we go to do something, every time we have a thought, every time we have a feeling, there already is an energy field around that. We may not be aware of it ourselves, we may not know it, but it's like a message is being sent out. So if you are a transmitter, and for many of us, we do believe that, something about our thoughts being, creating our reality, that it does have an effect on that. And that would be a fun topic to do sometimes, because, we could talk for hours on how you and I both have, seen that happen. The gift of imperfection is when we can truly let go of the need to be perfect in our doing, all right, in our human doings. And we simply be our best, not do our best, be our best. Your frequency shifts, and you don't have that struggle or effort or stress energy that goes along with that part about needing to be perfect. Now, it's kind of funny that I'm talking about the gifts of imperfection, because I think by nature, and perhaps definitely by, not perhaps, definitely by nurture, my former self was definitely a perfectionist. So I wish there was a word for being your bestest, instead of perfectionist, because best and perfection are different.
Mm-hmm.
And one time I read an article about, how you do well in an exam, and it said, don't aim for 90. And my thought, was, what do you mean don't aim for 90? Of course, I want to aim for at least 90 if you're the sort of person that gets marks in the 90s, all right, as a realistic goal. And it said, because when you do that, you'll be so disappointed when you don't get 90. Instead, aim for 80 or 75, and then you'll be surprised when you get 90. Now, I could see the logic behind that, because you take away the stress and attachment of outcome. However, my perfectionist self was not happy settling for 75. And then I realized, it's not aiming for 90. It's not aiming for 75. It's allowing your best to be, and understanding that your best is good enough. Now, many people will argue with me that, when something doesn't happen the way you want, your best obviously wasn't good enough. But the thing is, how do we become better than our best? That's going to happen in the future. My best today may be different from my best of yesterday, but my yesterday's best that's what I could achieve. So the gift of imperfection is understanding that when we allow this imperfection, we are not settling. You're not settling for that 75 mark. You're understanding that today I'm going to be my best, and woohoo, if it's going to be 90 something, great. If it's going to be 80 something, I don't have to beat myself up. I can look at, okay, what happened? What occurred that the 90 me didn't show through? Was it lack of preparation? Was it lack of understanding? Did I have a headache? And so our lives, you take the struggle and the push energy out. And so it's kind of interesting that this is the topic that we chose today after talking about power versus force.
Yep.
Because the gift of imperfection doesn't mean you're disempowered. It simply means you're not having to force that perfection to come through. So when we look at ourselves, where does this need to be perfect come from? Okay, it could be our personality, but where does that come from, right? It's like in the genes of, all the overachievers and all the rest of it. And for me, definitely I can point to two things. One, where did that, I got to check to make sure it's right. I got to check, is this good enough? Will this do, do some more research, Sandra, don't publish that yet. You haven't, researched enough. Why? Because as a kid, my school reports were, I don't think I ever had one school report where one subject didn't say could do better. And, as a kid, that used to get me so annoyed, because my thought, even then, although I was going to say centuries, not quite, but definitely decades ago, maybe it is centuries, maybe it was even past lives, right? And I thought, well, if I could have done better, I would. So why are you telling me this? Oh, Sandra should do better in the subject she doesn't like. No, it wasn't that. I didn't like the method of teaching. I didn't resonate with the teachers. So I'd turn off and daydream in class or whatever, right? And I did really well in the subjects where I liked the teacher and the teacher resonated with me. So that was my, you're not good enough. You could be doing a lot better. You should be doing a lot better. You should be more perfect than this. Where I was blessed with, and that was a wonderful, balancing energy, was my mom understanding, the school system would say to me, Sandra, it doesn't matter what mark you get, even if you fail, as long as you come back and tell me you've done your best, that's good enough for me. So I had that balance, right?
That was great because I
Mm.
didn't get that balance. I had my dad was just like comparing me with the first in class, you know, and I can't even remember the name of this little boy, you know, and that was for years a problem for me to be my worst enemy because it was never good enough. As now
Mm-hmm.
I understand, I do my best, and that's fine. And I think a lot of people are put under pressure by their environment as kids, where they have to perform, they have to be the best, but the best as in perfection, not the best as the best you are. So and yes, it's hard afterwards to just let go, and it took me years to accept that because I wanted to be the best. I wanted even to please in a way, you know.
Well, I think really that need to be best is really all about needing approval, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean that school report was definitely disapproving. There's no other word for it. And of course, we're all looking for, what do we want? We want harmony, right? We don't want conflict. And it takes us getting to a certain evolution of consciousness to understand, well, if you disapprove of me and I feel I've done my best and I know this is who I am, and who I am doesn't resonate with you, thank you and no thank you. But it takes a while for us to get to that confidence, and this is where working on our own personal journey really helps, and also learning from our past experiences. Sometimes I wonder, wow, if I had this level of consciousness when I was 29, where would I be now? But of course, we only get there after we've had these experiences and after we've done this journey. So the gift of imperfection is not only for ourselves, of how it affects us in a personal life, and also in, to do with our work lives, because you're taking that struggle and the stress energy out, right? And instead you're putting in the intention of offering the best that you can offer, not settling for this will do, right? You're the there are times where this is all we have, and that this will do has to do because that's all we have. It's really ensuring, and I think this is our own moral compass of, have I given this my best? Have I put in as much as I could to offer the best of me? And of course, we can't really say we're doing that until we know what the best of, what does the best of me mean? Because we may have been underestimating our own best for years simply because other people told us we weren't good enough. What's coming to mind for me is the feeling that I had, not feeling, it was just like in every cell of my body, of I am no good at art. And that's because I failed. How can you fail art, right? But I failed art in the 9th grade, all right, which was very humiliating for me, being the most sensitive age of a teenager. It's like, how can you fail art? And I got, Sandra's very immature. And really it was because I wasn't interested in still life drawing. Give me a wild abstract and let me, I most probably would be the sort who would throw a can of paint on canvas, as that kind of artist. And nowadays, if you talk about failing art, you look at how some paintings go for millions and it's 3 lines on a piece of canvas. sometimes it really baffles me, but it's perfect for someone, right?
Exactly.
Someone's wallet. So what helped me get over this really ingrown, imperfect artist that I was one day, and my brother he can sketch anything and he can draw beautifully. And I said to him, I can't draw at all. And he said, Sandra, drawing has nothing to do with your hand. It's all to do with your eyes and what you see. And nobody had ever told me that. It's like, if that art teacher had told me that, who failed me, perhaps I could draw those things she insisted on making me draw, And I thought, well, I know how to see because I'm a physiotherapist. And I can tell when a kid's shoulder, one shoulder is higher than the other, or his pelvis is rotated back on the left side. I can see really well. And suddenly, overnight, I could draw. I wouldn't say perfectly, because gift of imperfection, but you could certainly recognize what I drew. All right. Because suddenly I was looking at, okay, the angle of that neck to the shoulder is so many degrees, and I can mimic that, and I can draw that this is higher or that's lower. And then what happened? My husband and I had a stained glass business. And the first time we got a check, and I'm talking now, oh my gosh, over 30 years ago, for a project that we did for a home where the check was $10,000. My first thought was, thank you, people. Thank you, universe, for, delivering this to me. My second thought was, where's that art teacher? So much for me failing art, right? So for people out there who think they are imperfect is a judgment. What does perfect really mean, right?
For me, perfection doesn't exist. Excellency, yes, as you say, being the best, doing the best. Right. But perfection, there isn't. Doesn't exist.
Right. So as we shift out of that need, what comes to mind is that wonderful quote, done is better than perfect. And, when I was first on social media, I would post something and I go, oh, there's an error. Do I go back and edit it and change it and, whatever? Nowadays, it's like, there's an error. If I feel it's a, glaring error that's important, like the date is wrong or something, okay, go change it. If I spelt something and autocorrect changed it by one letter or something, so be it, and it's allowing ourselves that, because, what comes to mind is that's human, but somehow why is imperfection, only human? It's like, do other levels of energy don't make mistakes, don't have errors, so that part is, well, you're only human. No, it's because not an only, it's like, I want to embrace all of that. To me, life is messy. Life isn't all tiny little boxes, all, neat, put together, perfectly shaped. It's like, it's irregular, it's messy. And when you allow that, it's kind of ironic how the more you allow it, the more tidy life becomes, because you're not putting in all those extra energies of messing things up. The one part I wanted to talk about today in the gift of imperfection is sometimes we may observe something that is wrong, but we don't say anything because it's embarrassing, or we don't want to, put the person ill at ease. And what comes to mind is one time I did a Zoom call that was recorded, and like you, I had a logo in the background. Actually, it wasn't a logo, it was a phrase. And because I had mirrored my image, I didn't realize that it was backward. To my looking on my screen, it looked normal, but on everybody else's screen, it was backward. And not one single person on the call pointed it out to me. Now, these are people that I've met with several times over many years. It's not like it's a circle of people, right? So on my community platform page, I posted a poll. I asked how many people saw it, wanted to say something but didn't, how many people saw it and didn't think it was worth mentioning, and how many people didn't notice at all. Interestingly, only 2% did not notice it at all. So that tells us something about, putting up things on our background on Zoom. But anyway, it was only 2%. But the majority, I think it was over 90%, saw it, but didn't want to embarrass me by telling me. I said, hey, what kind of friend are you? By telling me, I could have changed it right away and fixed it. All right. I said, it's like, you're sitting in a restaurant and somebody has food stuck in their teeth and you don't say something. You'd be doing them a favor by telling them. But we have this inherent reservation of, well, I don't want to embarrass people. But isn't it more embarrassing, telling them all the time? The only time I saw something and I didn't tell someone was, being, as it were, more sensitive to energies, was I was getting off a ferry once in Hong Kong. And this woman, she was pushing a baby in a stroller, and her dress was super, super see-through in the light. All right. And she didn't have any underwear on. I mean, it was that see-through, okay, from the back, not the front. And I thought, do I say something? Because if she knew, she might, go out and get a pair of underwear or something, right? But then I thought, that may be her choice to be that transparent. And by pointing it out, I would, I'm much more likely to be insulting her. And anyway, my intuition said, Sandra, don't say anything. If my intuition had said, Sandra, let her know, I would have let her know, that's the only time I can think of where I hesitated to say something that had the potential to be embarrassing. But of course, one person's embarrassment is another person's intention. So I'm not quite sure what was going on there.
Exactly, the embarrassment. I mean, it's like everything else. It depends how you receive it, and what you would call embarrassment would not be embarrassment for somebody else. So
right. So in that case, it was my judgment call to say, okay, maybe don't say anything about this at all. So the thing to look at for ourselves is, can we be that frank with ourselves with kindness? So can we have that compassion to allow ourselves that imperfection while still having aspirations? And I think I'd like to spend a little bit more time talking about that part where people hesitate because they say, Sandra, I can't let it go. I don't want to let it go, because if I let it go, if I don't push, if I don't try to be perfect, then it's going to be disappointing, because I'm never going to do my best and I'm never going to try harder, and I'm never, I'm going to get lazy. And so there's this whole thing of somehow allowing imperfection encourages laziness.
So they feel that if they're imperfect, they are not driven to achieve more.
Exactly. And so there's this, you chose the perfect word there, in driven. Whereas to me, it's about motivation, not the push, right?
Force.
And yes, so we're back to power and force. So in having the motivation to always be your best and allowing for, I want to call it room for error, it doesn't make you erroneous. It doesn't cause you to make mistakes. It simply assists you so that if something turns out differently from what you anticipated, you can look back and go, okay, what would it take for the outcome to be different next time? As opposed to, what could I have done differently? Because you didn't do it differently. So you can't change that. But look going forward. So there's this idea that forward next time will give you the opportunity to have a better outcome. But it's not about you failed because you were imperfect.
But that's the thing as well. In our society, making a mistake is seen as something negative, and we should shift that even at school and just say, okay, you made a mistake, well, that's fine. What did you learn, right? Well, what would you do differently now that you know that you've made a mistake? So if we change a little bit this this mindset, I mean, even for kids, that would help them to be probably more creative and believe in themselves more. And so they will not see imperfection as something negative. For me, because obviously I've worked on that, I see imperfection as being unique. You see, I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect, but that's my uniqueness.
Because one of the things is when you do it wrong or you get criticized. I went to a very brutal school in terms of, you know, their idea of how to motivate children was really, no, there was no motivation. There was just humiliation when you didn't do things right. When I was a kid, and this is in the lower grades, I remember in grade 3, there was one particular teacher who was, God bless her. She, when a kid did well, you know, okay, we're used to the stars or, you know, something like that as a, you know, a reward system. If you wrote nicely, you got, the girls got rabbits, the boys got airplanes. If you were untidy, you got the pig chop. Pig. My book had nothing but pig chops. I was told my handwriting looked like a cockroach had dropped in the ink and crawled across the paper. Okay, so it was, I tell you, really brutal. Now, my poor handwriting, I can say most of my time, I remember 8 years old, floating above my body and watching myself from some other realm. You know, I was so dissociated. I was never in my body, and I don't think you can have good handwriting if you're not fully grounded. And, you know, that's why coloring and writing is, you know, a really good grounding exercise, right? So I already knew before I handed my work in that I could look forward to a pig. So why bother?
Exactly.
So the thing is, it was, you know, doing the opposite of what they wanted, and it demotivated me, right? So I had great pleasure in allowing myself to be imperfect because I was already labeled with this untidy equals pig chop. And it's, as a child, we are unaware that we can counteract that. As an adult, we can counteract it if you have the perfectionist boss, the perfectionist partner, the perfectionist whatever, who's constantly, you know, pointing out your imperfections. There, 3 words that I love to add to anybody who says things. I suggest this, especially somebody who is hurtful, somebody who is mean with their criticism, destructive criticism as opposed to constructive critique. Add these 3 words and you will feel instantly better, in your opinion. I had a friend, and you know, we'd be sitting having a coffee, you know, she'd sweep the kitchen floor or whatever. And I'd been there when her husband came home. Hello, he would say to her, and then he would reach for the broom and sweep the floor she had just swept, because perhaps there were 2 more crumbs that she had missed. Which is fine, because he likes that perfect floor. But, you know, had I been his spouse, I wouldn't have bothered to sweep at all. It's like, I know he's going to do it anyway. I may as well just save it for him, right?
Exactly. Just like, well, if it's not good enough, do it yourself.
Yeah. Well, that happened to me with one of my brothers. I remember I ironed his shirt, and he had been in, you know, former army officer. So you have to have this like perfect line down the sleeve. And I handed him his shirt and he says, "What are these railway lines?" You know, and criticized my ironing. I said, "Gee, bro, guess you'll have to iron it yourself, because this is the way I iron."
Yeah, I had that as well with my dad as well, which like sweeping the, not the floor, but just like cleaning the table. And he would say, "Yeah, you missed that and all that." And I'd say, "Here is the sponge. Just do it if you want."
So for, people who are watching this or, watching the recording later on, what is the gift we can give them to help balance that? All right. And this is where I can bring in a little bit of heart metta, which is putting our right hand up here and, usually closing our eyes and simply holding the thought, all the times I was criticized, all the times I was criticized as a child unfairly, and fair is an opinion, all the times I felt hurt by other people's criticism, all the times I was made to feel inadequate, all the times people told me I was not enough when I was doing and being my best. All those times are over. All those times are in the past, and I no longer have any need to carry even an atom of that hurt with me anymore. Those times are truly over, past, and history. And yes, some people may still offer me unwanted and unhelpful criticism. Now I can add the words, "Thank you for your feedback. This is your opinion." And if my own resonates where, yes, there's something to learn, I could have done something differently, I will remember that for the next time, And if you are a person who likes to include forgiveness, you can add, "I forgive anybody I blamed, including the universe and myself, for feeling or being made to feel imperfect. And I am free to move forward, unencumbered, free from the past. I'm free to be me without this past worry of me being imperfect." Wonderful.
Wow, thank you very much, Sandra. So that's Heart Metta, what you teach and what you use as well with your clients. So that's great to get rid of limiting beliefs. And
Absolutely, because when you talk to children, it's only later on when they start comparing themselves, even if you don't compare. Okay, something that I really watch for with little ones I'm around is, they're writing their ABC and it doesn't look exactly like the book. And if you have a perfectionist kid and, kid of that nature, they might get fed up or not want to do it again. And instead you get to cheer them and say, okay, that's, first of all, that's printed, that's from a computer, that's not somebody writing it. And you show them some fonts that aren't perfect, in that, for them to understand that this is okay. And when they understand it's okay, and when they get encouraged that, hey, you got to do it, that's fine. And then they can learn to let go of that need that may be inherent in their nature at an early age, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and school is a bit like that as well. You have to perform, you have to, or you exist through your qualifications. That needs to change.
Absolutely. And lots of schools are I shouldn't say lots. There are some schools that are adopting different systems where you don't have that, and you don't have, there's much more of a cooperative learning as opposed to that. For my grandson in New Zealand, it's wonderful to go to their school because you get to see the kids all participate on, what we used to call speech day, the end where you go up for your prize. in their school, every kid gets a prize. Every kid gets to go up and get something. There's not one kid left sitting there not getting something. And it's such a different energy, and all the kids cheer each other on. At the beginning of the school term, they all get up, even the little ones, just 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, get up and they talk about their lineage and everything. And I watch, and every child there is rooting for the kid. Every child is cheering this kid on. And when they're shy and they hesitate, there's no criticism. There's no, oh, she didn't do it. There's no mockery. There's this, it's okay, you can do it. We're all listening. And even the, what you would expect of teenagers of, 14, 15, 16, who's like, oh, I got to listen. No, none of that. They're all like, it's okay, you can do it. There's this wonderful, wonderful nurturing energy. And I go, wow, they sure know how to do this.
Yes.
And if only other school systems could look at this and see how well this is and go with this, if only they could do that and adopt that, I feel, you would be raising a whole different generation of people who are excelling, as you put
Exactly.
it, because they're motivated to do it, for sure.
I totally agree. Well, Sandra, thank you very much. Anything else as a gift of imperfection?
I think my parting words would be to allow yourself in the evening, if you find any of that energy coming in of, oh, I shouldn't have, or I could have done it differently, to go, wait a minute, that's still an opinion, my opinion in this case. And instead of looking at it that way, take home the gift of, okay, what does this show me? Today is all right. It's okay, even when it's not okay, even if you made the most chaotic mistake or whatever. It's like, okay, instead of blaming myself, instead of getting down on myself and beating myself up, I'm going to use this as a growth opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to grow. And what clues can I get so that tomorrow's outcome perhaps can look differently?
Well, thank you very much, Sandra.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And my guest next week will be Chimida Anusiem, who's going to talk about single and secure and how to enjoy your single season. And if you've missed any talk shows, any previous talk shows, don't worry, check my YouTube channel, Phoenix Coaching and Training. Click on the subscription button and even the little bell, so you will get the notifications when I upload a new video. And thank you ever so much, Sandra. I know you're coming back in February, if I remember well. So I think you will be from New Zealand. You will be with us from New Zealand. So that's going to be great.
I look forward to that. Yes, definitely.
I will look forward
definitely
to it.
Looking forward to New Zealand, since it will be winter here and summer there. So
oh yes, and I know you like the beach, so
I like the beach. Oh boy, I can't wait to smell that ocean air. I'm very blessed to have the lake here, but I tell you, ocean energy, that's what it's about for me. So thank you, and I look forward to being back again.
Yes, have a nice trip. But I know I will be speaking to you before or when you arrive there. So audience, I'll see you next Monday with Chidima, who's going to talk about single and secure. So see you next week. And thanks again, Sandra.
My pleasure.
Bye.